Jaguars on a Tuesday. I got a guest, my man from Pro Football Focus, Austin Gayle, and he's going to tell you all about the guy that he believes is going to be the first pick for the Jaguars, Aidan Hutchinson. We'll do it just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining us here on a Tuesday, making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day, and we are free on all platforms. And we thank you for making us your first listen. I'm going to get right into it. This is an Aidan Hutchinson love fest here today. For all of those people who criticized me just because I had the gall to take a deep dive into seeing what all the Tavon Austin chatter was all about, and the fact that for a long time I've said that Thibodeau is my guy, right? So, and Evan Neal is my guy. If they go offensive line, I said Evan Neal. If they go defense, I said Kayvon Thibodeau. We got someone today that is doing a 4-part podcast called The Hutch, and it is going to be absolutely outstanding. And he knows everything, Aidan Hutchinson. We ain't going to wait till the break and all of that to bring him in. We're going to do a whole show with him. This is my man, Austin Gayle from PFF, Pro Football Focus. You can see him. He's joined me on the screen right now, and his Twitter is at PFF_Austin Gayle with a Y-L-E, not G-A-I-L. Austin, what's going on, man? Can I call you AG? How about that?
AG works for me, man. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. I got beat up a little bit because folks around here that want Aidan Hutchinson to be the draft pick, because that's kind of what they've been told is going to happen. He's going to be the draft choice for the Jaguars, and he puts up great film. And when you watch him, he checks all the boxes with his effort. He went and won the combine. He has this great haircut. He's big. He's taller than you think. He speaks well. You can tell he comes from a real good family, football family. He's going to be grounded. He ain't going to get in a lot of trouble. All of that. See, some of that stuff to me, when it comes to the way these evaluators think, it don't mean a hill of beans. They don't even want to see the guy who's going to chase the guy and catch him the most on Sunday. So tell me first, introduce yourself, and then talk about the Hutch project.
Yeah, so my name is Austin Gayle. I'm the director of content here at PFF. We're working to put together the Hutch. It's a 4-part podcast series where we interview Aidan and his family. We've talked to, I think, over 20 different media personnel, a lot of draft analysts, a lot of former coaches, Jim Harbaugh, Don Brown, some opponent coaches as well, guys that have coached against him from Western Michigan and Washington. And the whole goal really is to tell his story, right? To put together a project that could really tell a story on a number 1 overall pick. We really do feel that Aidan Hutchinson will be the number 1 overall pick. I will say there are a lot of other really talented players in this draft. Evan Neal of Alabama, Kayvon Thibodeau, Oregon, Ike Ekwonu, NC State. I do feel that Aidan Hutchinson is the best player in this draft and the best pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 1 overall. And it's for more than just his high motor and the character and the football family stuff. He's a really productive player. He was the highest graded player in all of college football last year, according to Pro Football Focus, and also had the highest pass rush win rate on true pass sets, wins in multiple ways, can win with his hands. He's a super athlete, great 3-cone, great short shuttle, 28 reps on the bench. Like, he is a guy that checks all the boxes. And in this pre-draft process, every single year, evaluators are looking for guys that check all the boxes: measurables, intangibles, production, character, motor, all these things. And Aidan Hutchinson, every step of the way, checks those boxes. And it's exactly what you look for, right? You're trying to mitigate or limit risk when you're evaluating players in the draft. It's not so much chasing ceilings and all that stuff. You're mitigating risk. You're trying to reduce risk. And Aidan Hutchinson, there's very few risks, very few errors or weaknesses on his tape to speak to.
I do sometimes take light to folks that consider prospects safe. Mm-hmm. And safe sounds like you married a librarian who's a 6 when she's at work and a 7.5 that, and she can cook really good. And I'm not knocking that, because that's great. So anybody that married a librarian who kind of fits that, I'm not saying that that's not good. But the fact that people characterize someone like that as safe, as opposed to, that's a superstar to me, man. That's a knockout. What are you talking? I like those little glasses. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So my thing is, yeah, there you go. So my thing is to characterize something that someone likes as safe. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's wrong because it diminishes them to a certain extent. It means they're averted risk.
I think safe has a negative connotation, right? Safe is that he maybe isn't the ceiling player you think he is, but he's a can't miss type of player. Where I am with Aidan Hutchinson is not so much that he's safe, it's that there's just a lot of clear-cut, projectable talent for him, right? Like, you know he has the size, he has the athleticism. He's had proven production in the Big Ten, in a good conference, against talented offensive tackles. He's reduced injury. He takes care of himself off the field, extreme with his diet, extreme with how he works out, high character guy off the field and on the field. Talk to any coach or any teammate that has worked with him. They speak to that, comes from a football family, is committed and passionate for the game. It's all these things that about Aidan Hutchinson. I think when you bring up safety with the prospect, there's just so few unknowns with Aidan Hutchinson, right? You know exactly what you're getting, and a lot of what you're getting checks the box of what you're looking for. Whereas with other prospects, right, Trayvon Walker, for example, of Georgia, we don't know. We haven't seen him have elite production in the SEC. We haven't seen him play purely outside of the tackle edge snaps because he played so much on the inside at Georgia. We haven't seen him play a lot of snaps, right? He has by far the fewest snaps played of any of the top edge defenders in this class. There are more unknowns with Trayvon Walker than there are Aidan Hutchinson. Aidan Hutchinson meets the snap thresholds, the athleticism thresholds, the size, the production, the intangibles, the character, the motor, all these different things at the highest level. That, in my opinion, maybe isn't safe, but it's clean and it's obvious and it's so not murky and unknown.
Now, I did a podcast the other day just for to be transparent, and I said that the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I never once said I didn't think Aidan's going to be a good player, but sometimes when you watch the tape, you want to get grabbed. You want that thing to grab you, right? So with him, it never did. It never grabbed me the way, because I compare Kayvon Thibodeau to Micah Parsons. Like, okay, number one high school player coming out, and sometimes we question what is he, his motor, and then all of a sudden a dude like Parsons goes to the league, and he said, "Y'all must have forgot." And for me, he's always been in the league. So I've been looking for somebody to kind of knock him off of his perch a little bit. I looked at Tavon the other day, and what I saw was a bunch of plays where they weren't statistical, but he kept winning. Yeah. And what I mean by you can't blame him because all of these guys around him are making plays and they're getting people off the field and making people one-dimensional. You also can't blame Jermaine Johnson, who left Georgia because he was behind Travon Walker, and he goes to Florida and he has all of this production that sort of looks like Aidan's production. Yeah. But you can't also blame Aidan because he did his job. Mm-hmm. That's where the interview process, and what we're going to talk about in segment 2, that's where the projection comes in and what team is going to put them in position and to find out what these teams want them to do at the next level. So that's where I want to tap into you real quick about, I want you to tell us after, we holler at one of our sponsors real quick. I want you to tell us, and this is the question, what does he project to be at the next level? And we'll answer that question here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. I tell you what, it's time of year again that college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. You got 3 blue bloods in the Final Four. You got maybe the greatest rivalry in sports in one of the games between UNC and Duke. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. You can log in and check out all of your Vegas casino games. That famous horse race that they run in Kentucky is coming up, so you have the prelims for that. So you need to head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action on betonline.net, because it is where the game starts, and I'll be front and center this weekend for those big semifinal matchups. Now, we're back with my man AG, Austin Gayle. So I gave my man a nickname already because that's how I roll. We got Austin Gayle from PFF. His Twitter handle is @PFF_Austin Gayle. That's Gayle. He's doing a very, very interesting podcast, a 4-part podcast called The Hutch, and it's all about Aidan Hutchinson. And this is one of the real good reasons I want to do this, because it'll back all those Jaguar fans off me that's sitting there thinking that I'm against this kid, and I'm not, when I'm just trying to put the information out there. What do you project? We're going to talk about projection because a lot of that plays a part, and what position the teams actually put him in. sometimes determines what their success is. I mentioned Michael Parsons. Dallas had to have the wherewithal to put him at edge rusher and 9 wide every now and then and move him around instead of sticking him at the Sam linebacker spot in order to realize his potential. What do you see the Jaguars doing? Because you've already told me that this is where you think he's going to go, and that's their pick. And I actually said 2 months ago that somebody told me that was going to be the pick at that time. What do you see his projection is? Is there a comp to him? And what are the best things that they could do in order to maximize Aidan's ability at the next level?
Yeah, I think projection is, again, what everyone tries to do in every single NFL draft, right? And when you spoke to Trayvon Walker and Jermaine Johnson, Kayvon Thibodeau saying, well, you can't blame him because you haven't seen those things. I don't think blame is the right word, but it is, you are projecting more with Trayvon Walker. You're projecting more with Jermaine Johnson because you simply haven't seen some of the things that you saw from Aidan Hutchinson over the course of his career at Michigan. This is a guy that started as a true, played as a true freshman, did not burn a redshirt year, played every year up until he got hurt in 2020, broke his ankle, came back in 2021, and was the best defensive player in the country. Like that's not projection. That's what happened. And in terms of projecting him to the NFL, has the size, athleticism, character, effort thresholds to really be a standout double-digit sack type of player. I think if he does go to Jacksonville, he plays opposite left side of Josh Allen, either stand-up outside linebacker or with his hand in the ground playing defensive end and rushing the passer, right? He's a really good run defender. He'll be a big winner in tackles for loss. And I also think he'll get after the passer with a lot of high-effort sacks and those types of things. In terms of the player comparison, this is tough, right? I think making player comparisons for someone as rare as Aidan Hutchinson, the Bosa brothers come up. I don't think he has the bend of the Bosa brothers. And even with his 3-cone and his short shuttle, I don't think that's as evident of how he can turn the pocket as some of those guys are. I think Kyle Vanden Bosch is another name that I think maybe makes more sense. Patrick Kearney, former Atlanta Falcons defensive end, is another one that kind of comes to mind in terms of player comparison. But Aidan Hutchinson is one of one. I mean, he's a projected top number 1 overall pick because of how rare he is as a talent and as an athlete. So I do think that people will be making player comparisons to Aidan Hutchinson shortly before we know it. I think it's because of just how talented he'll be right out of the gate too. I think you're projecting a very polished player, expert hand usage, multiple pass rush moves, can win late and early in the snap. That's a guy that, again, clears 10 sacks every single year.
Now, I know how Jaguars think. I know how the fans are. You mentioned Patrick Kearney, they're going to go crazy and go, no, thank you. So I'm going to throw one out there that someone gave me. And if he turns out to be Jared Allen, I'm sold. Because Jared Allen was 6'6", and Aidan is almost 6'7". So one of the things that I had an issue with was 6'7", 270. I'm sitting there trying to find. I looked up Max Crosby's numbers, and Max is 6'4.5" and 255. So that's not it. I thought about Jason Pierre-Paul because I didn't want to just start mentioning all white guys because that's crazy. Because football doesn't work that way, right? So I'm thinking, and I get to Jared Allen. Somebody said it, and he's Carlos Dunlap. Jaguar fans would take that type of production from Aidan Hutchinson in his first year. Now, you've obviously done a lot of research. Tell us when the podcast is coming out. And I want to ask you some things that what does him and his family probably think as to where he's going to go?
Yeah, so the podcast will be released in April 2022, likely early to mid-April is when we have that coming out. And it's a combination of a ton of interviews, right? A big shout out to our director of communications, David Sofaro, who's booked more than 50 interviews for this podcast. Aidan, his entire family, a lot of media analysts, a lot of players, a lot of coaches, to just make sure we tell his story the best, right? And his story is an interesting one, right? A guy that grew up in the shadow of his dad. Chris Hutchinson won 4 Big Ten titles and beat Ohio State every single time he played them at Michigan. And then from there, Aidan wears the same number as his dad and lives, creates his own legacy at Michigan. I don't know if that number 97 will be worn by another player in the near future, just knowing that Hutchinson and the impact that he's had. So I am a huge fan of Aidan's story. I think it shows it's rare support. I think the way I frame it is just rare support from his family, and it's just rare commitment levels, right? This is a guy that journals every single day, mapping towards his goals and what he wants to be. I'll tell you what, when he was a kid, his goal was to be 265 pounds and run a 4.5 at the combine. He got pretty close to that when he did. So I'm just really impressed with just the consistency from his family in terms of support and the consistency in him and just continuing to prioritize his goals, right? He found out that gluten could negatively affect his workouts. He stopped eating gluten. He found out that he needs to stop eating sugar. He stops eating sugar. He needs to wake up earlier. He'll wake up earlier. He does whatever it takes to reach his goals that he writes down every single day in his journal. It's just a rare type of human being, right? That in addition to being 6'7", 260 with absurd athleticism, has the mindset to really be the best at his position, as he was in college football this past year.
All right. So one final segment, we're going to talk more about Aidan Hutchinson. We're going to talk about more of the picture that you paint, and it seems very accurate, and there's nothing that I disagree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk more of what his impact could be and how you think he could relate to the city of Jacksonville, because he has a lot of relatable traits, a lot of things about him that it makes it very, very hard. You got to almost be a hater to think that he's not going to be a good football player, which I've been accused of being, but that's not the case. I'm just doing my due diligence. We're going to talk more about that here in just a second in the third segment of Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you guys about Rock Auto. You guys talk about drive. Every time you talk about drive, you think I'm talking about how long was the drive and how much is the time possession. No, I'm talking about sometimes driving your car. And how long of a drive you have will depend on the quality of the parts and accessories and how enjoyable that makes it. And at rockauto.com, you'll find all of the car parts and accessories that you need. But here's the kicker: at very, very, very overly competitive prices. And what I mean by that is you're going to pay less money. You're going to pay less money for more quality, and they're going to be delivered to your door. You don't have to go stand in some chain store while little Timmy runs around and acts like he's looking for a part when really he just ordered it from someone down the street. And he's going to ask you questions like, how many liters of oil do you have? And how big's your engine? Like, what do I look like? A mechanic? I don't know. This is my car. Give me the part. RockAuto.com, you just go on the computer, log in your laptop, boom, go to the website, and guess what? You get a knock on your door, there it is. Your part will come to you, and it'll be the part that you need for your vehicle. So when you go to rockauto.com, they're going to ask you, how did you hear about us? Right in that little box, just go Locked On. Just tell them we sent you so that they know they're taking care of family. For all your car parts and all of the things you need for your vehicle, visit rockauto.com, as people have done for more than 2 decades. All right, we're talking everything Aidan Hutchinson with Austin Gayle. We appreciate you making us your first listen. You want to hear more about the NFL? Tune into the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast with Eric Crocker, former NFL cornerback, as well as Ryan Tracy, a master of analytics. And they're going to probably echo some of the things that you hear right here with Austin Gayle, who does a great job at PFF. And this is fascinating, man, because now you almost got me wanting to change my damn mind about who I think that they should pick. So if the Jaguars do take Aidan Hutchinson, explain to us what you told us about his stuff on the field. What kind of guy is he off the field, and what would this community be getting?
Yeah, I think before I get into that too, I want to be adamant that Aidan Hutchinson, though my pick for number 1 overall, he's hotly contested with a lot of really talented players in this draft, right? I think Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker will compete for that number 1 overall spot. And I think either of the top 3 offensive tackles, Ike Ekwonu of NC State, Evan Neal of Alabama, and Charles Cross of Mississippi State are all should be in consideration, right? I don't think it's Aidan Hutchinson, in my opinion, is the best player in this draft, but I don't think he's an arm and a leg better, right? It's not the clear-cut, obvious decision for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think there's a lot of others to consider at that position. As for Aidan Hutchinson, what he is on the field is almost not as good as what he is off the field. I think that's probably been the piece that I've been most impressed with, right? He's such a committed individual. I've talked about the journaling a ton. His diet he takes very seriously. I talked to his head strength and conditioning coach at Michigan, Ben Herbert, who at Michigan, that strength and conditioning program tests 41 different key performance indicators, or 41 KPIs, or it's, neck flexibility, left knee strength, right knee strength, hip abduction, all these different KPIs that test what is your body and where is it good and where is it weak. He, of any player over the last 2 years, have the highest composite score across all 41 KPIs, which again, doesn't just speak to the athlete he is, it's the body type, right? It's just rare flexibility. It's rare athleticism. It's rare size. It's all these different thresholds that the NFL covets at the next level. I mean, I do feel that he is going to be someone that can change a culture, change a locker room, and lead a locker room in the NFL, which is something that I think the Jacksonville Jaguars need, right? Coming off of what was, I don't even think this is putting it that highly, a disaster with Urban Meyer, right? It was a disaster with Urban Meyer this past year. I don't think the culture was there. I think they desperately need a player like Aidan Hutchinson, a human being like Aidan Hutchinson, to come in that locker room and lead them past what is obviously a very dark time in Jacksonville, right? They are not winning a lot of football games. They are not Super Bowl competitive. I think Aidan Hutchinson at number 1 overall is just a step along the way to getting back to that point.
And I don't disagree with you. I agree with what you said. I have a great appreciation for what you said at the beginning of the segment, that there are a lot of guys who can that have the potential to be franchise changers. It's almost like if someone asks, what's your favorite drink? And I go, the orange one. And they go, oh, so you don't like purple or red. I didn't say that. I'm just saying, for me, the orange drink is just something that I see. So for me, I do know that the people in Detroit would probably be salivating over him. Their defensive line coach, Todd Wash, who was here, he has the perfect position for Aidan Hutchinson. It's this 5B big end that he runs, that he plays. They did it in reverse with Michael Bennett because they had the pass rusher as Cliff Averill out in Seattle. But it's what Calais Campbell played here, if you remember, in the Jaguars 2017 run. It would be perfect. Is it perfect enough, you think, that Detroit, and this is just your opinion, that Detroit would be willing to swap 1 and 2 and give the Jaguars some of those extra goodies that they have at the end of the first or maybe early in the second to try to coax him? Because as much as he means here, you send a Michigan kid to Detroit and he can play, he'll own the city.
No, I do think that there would be some interest from Detroit, but I think they're also preparing for the fact that he's not going to be available, right? I think they really like the defensive ends that they have there in Detroit, and the Aquara brothers, and they want to give those guys more run. If Aidan Hutchinson falls to 2, but gets to number 2 overall, I do think the Detroit Lions sprint the pick in and make him the selection. But I honestly view Aidan Hutchinson just not getting past that point, right? I do think that the Jacksonville Jaguars ultimately commit to him. And could the Detroit Lions maybe trade a 3rd or a 4th round pick to move up an additional spot, say the Jaguars aren't interested in drafting Aidan Hutchinson or would anyway? I think there's opportunity there, but I don't think trading up for Aidan, a non-quarterback, I think that's pretty unlikely.
Very, very good. And I do appreciate it. I want you to give us, again, all of the information of the podcast, when it's going to be out, where it's going to be. Of course, you're probably like me on all platforms. That's what we always say. So let us know, and let us know where they can find you every day on PFF also.
Yeah, definitely check out pff.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at PFF_Austin Gayle. The Hutch podcast will be coming out in April 2022, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. And you can also follow my current podcast, Tailgate, where we're talking about the draft, the NFL, college football every single week. Appreciate you having me on, and this has been fantastic.
I appreciate you, and I'm going to do it again if you don't mind. I'm going to tap back in with you maybe right before the draft or even a little after, and we can probably review Aidan and then some of the other players and how they stack up where they're going to be. Austin Gayle from PFF at PFF_Austin Gayle. I'm Tony Wiggins here on Locked On Jaguars with another edition. Tune in again tomorrow, and as I always tell you, take care of each other, and we'll see you later.